Trump declares end to 7 wars, criticizes global institutions. Macron calls for peace, recognizes Palestinian state. Erdogan condemns Gaza assault, urges global recognition of Palestine. Syria's president calls for end to Israeli violations, lift voice for Palestine. Good afternoon, welcome to Around the World in 30 minutes on Politics and Business Television. I'm Fatima Abubakar Oibo. Many thanks for joining us. Details of this news stories and more content to come after the short break. Stay with us. At the 80th United Nations General Assembly in New York, U.S. President Donald Trump delivered a very keynote address claiming to have ended 7 unendable wars within 7 months of his administration. He touted his foreign policy achievements, including halting conflicts in Iran and brokering peace deals, while sharply criticizing the UN for what he described as ineffectiveness and excessive spending.
As everyone knows, I have also been deeply engaged in seeking a ceasefire in Gaza. Have to get that done. Have to get it done. Unfortunately, Hamas has repeatedly rejected reasonable offers to make peace. We can't forget October 7th, can we? Now, as if to encourage continued conflict, some of this body is seeking to unilaterally recognize a Palestinian state. The rewards would be too great for Hamas terrorists for their atrocities. This would be a reward for these horrible atrocities, including October 7th, even while they refuse to release the hostages or accept a ceasefire. Instead of giving to Hamas and giving so much, because they've taken so much, they have taken so much. This could have been solved so long ago. But instead of giving in to Hamas's ransom demands, those who want peace should be united with one message: release the hostages now. Just release the hostages now. Thank you. Thank you. As we have got to come together, and we will come together, got to get it done. We have to stop the war in Gaza immediately. We have to stop it. We have to get it done. We have to negotiate, immediately have to negotiate peace. We got to get the hostages back. We want all 20 back. We don't want 2 and 4. As you know, I got, along with Steve Witkoff and others that helped us, Marco Rubio, we got most of them back. We were involved in all of them. But I always said the last 20 are going to be the hardest, and that's exactly what happened. We have to get them back now. We don't want to get back 2, and then another 2, and then 1, and then 3. Have this process. No, we want them all back, and we want the actually 38 dead bodies back too. Those parents came to me, and they want them back, and they want them back very quickly and very badly, as though they were alive. They want them. They want them every bit as much as if their son or daughter were alive. I've also been working relentlessly, stopping the killing in Ukraine. I thought that would be, of the 7 wars that I stopped, I thought that would be the easiest because of my relationship with President Putin, which had always been a good one. I thought that was going to be the easiest one. But, you know, in war, you never know what's going to happen. There are always lots of surprises, both good and bad. Everyone thought Russia would win this war in 3 days. But it didn't work out that way.
Trump also addressed global flashpoint, urging immediate action on Gaza and warning against unilateral recognition of a Palestinian state, which he said would reward terrorism. Islam climate policies as a hoax, dismissed renewable energy efforts, and accused China of being the world's top polluter. On migration, he claimed the UN spent hundreds of millions to support illegal entry into the US, stating that the UN is supposed to stop invasion, not promote them. His remarks drew sharp reactions from delegates, setting a combative tone for the week's diplomatic engagements. Meanwhile, French President Emmanuel Macron delivered a powerful address at the 80th United Nations General Assembly, formally announcing France's recognition of a Palestinian state and urging an immediate end to the war in Gaza. He called for the release of hostages, a halt to bombardment, and renewed commitments to a two-state solution. He described the ongoing conflict as a failure of global diplomacy and one that against the rise or survival of the fittest, politics in international relations.
France and Europe will be at that meeting, and we will be in step with the 2030 goals. We will mobilise all financing necessary to usher in this transition, whether that be public or private financing. We have no right to turn away, stray from the course towards the goals we set ourselves. We have no right to simply crumble and become isolated. As you've seen, all of these global challenges, education, healthcare, agriculture, food security, biodiversity, climate, the fight ultimately against all inequalities that destabilize our global order require the same spirit of cooperation, the same spirit that I talked about, the spirit we showed in the face of war and destabilization. Our challenge is the fact that crises, there's a plethora of them, they're growing in number. My speech was long and quite comprehensive, but I do reassure you I'm coming to an end. But I forcefully say to you once more, in spite of all that, in spite of the long list that sometimes gives the impression that we might be overwhelmed, our duty is to remain on our feet and to continue to act together. 80 years ago, those that preceded us were facing collapse. The war hadn't finished. The worst had just come to pass. A world already divided was kind of stuttering, and it was up to them to build the treasure that is the United Nations. We could overwhelm our assembly, level criticism against it, reproach it for everything. Not all reproaches are fair, some are. This assembly is us. If it's ineffective, it's because some people are blocking it. Sometimes it's the most powerful. If it's not going fast enough, it's...
Macron's speech stood in sharp contrast to U.S. President Donald Trump's remark, which criticized the UN and opposed unilateral recognition of Palestine. Macron defended the role of the United Nations and called for restoring the spirit of cooperation that defined its founding. In other news, a Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney made headlines by formally announcing Canada's recognition of a Palestinian state, joining the United Kingdom, Australia, and over 140 UN member nations in backing the move. In a pointed address, Carney condemned Israel's military actions in Gaza.
Over many decades, Canada's commitment to this goal was premised on the expectation that this outcome would be eventually achieved as part of a negotiated settlement. Regrettably, this possibility has been steadily and gravely eroded, including by the pervasive threat of Hamas terrorism to Israel and its people, culminating in the heinous attack of October 7th. The accelerated building of settlements across the West Bank and East Jerusalem and the soaring settler violence against Palestinians. Actions such as the E1 settlement plan and the Israeli government's contribution to the humanitarian disaster in Gaza. Stolen from the Palestinian people, chased them and cheated them from their life and liberty, and it can in no way dictate their future. But Excellencies, the current Israeli government is working methodically to prevent the prospect of a Palestinian state from ever being established. Proud policy of the current Israeli government that there will be, and I quote, no Palestinian state. In this context, Canada recognizes the state of Palestine And we offer our full partnership in building the promise of a peaceful future for both the State of Palestine and the State of Israel. Excellencies, Canada is under no illusions that this recognition is a panacea.
Carney emphasized that the current Israeli government's policies are erasing any possibility of Palestinian self-determination, directly challenging the notion that peace can be achieved without recognition. He added that Canada's decision aligns with its long-standing support for a two-state solution. The move has sparked domestic and international debate, with Israel's envoy to Ottawa and Canadian Jewish organizations urging a reversal, warning of political fallout. Nonetheless, Carney stood firm, framing the recognition as a moral and legal imperative. Still on the news, Indonesian President Prabowo Subianto.
Words of the United Nations Declaration of Independence have inspired democratic movements across continents, including the French Revolution, the Russian Revolution, the Mexican Revolution, the Chinese Revolution, and Indonesia's own struggle and journey to freedom. It also gave birth to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, adopted by the United Nations in 1948. All men are created equal was the creed that opened the way to unprecedented global prosperity and dignity. And yet, in an era capable of ending hunger, poverty, and environmental ruin, we also continue to face today grave dangers, challenges, and uncertainties. Human folly, fueled by fear, racism, hatred, oppression, and apartheid, threatens our common future. My country knows this pain. For centuries, Indonesians lived under colonial domination, oppression, and slavery. We were treated less than dogs in our own homeland.
In a bold diplomatic gesture, President Prabowo announced Indonesia's readiness to deploy 20,000 peacekeepers to Gaza or anywhere peace is needed, including Ukraine. His remarks resonated with themes of solidarity and decolonization, urging world leaders to uphold the principles of human dignity and international law. The speech marked Indonesia's strongest stance yet on the conflict, reinforcing its role as a leading voice from the global south. In the meantime, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan delivered a forceful and emotionally charged speech at the 80th United Nations General Assembly, calling the war in Gaza an invasion, not a war, and accusing Israel of committing genocide against Palestinians. He denounced Tel Aviv's actions across the region, including attacks on Qatar, Syria, Iran, Yemen, and Lebanon, and warned that Israel is completely out of control. Erdogan's remarks drew sharp attention to the humanitarian catastrophe unfolding in Gaza and the silence of global powers, which he said amounts to complicity. In a direct appeal to the international community, Erdogan urged all nations to recognize the state of Palestine, praising those who had already done so and calling on others to follow suit. He expressed regret over the absence of Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas at the assembly and emphasized Turkey's unwavering support for Palestinian self-determination.
This one. What kind of a human conscience can possibly bear this? Possibly. How can one stay silent vis-a-vis this? In a world where children are dying of starvation and lack of medication, can we possibly have calm and peace? We all are parents. We have children or grandchildren who we dearly cherish. Here, say in America or in Europe, anywhere in the world, when a small rose thorn hurts a child's hand, the hearts of parents break. But in Gaza, children's hands, arms, and legs are being amputated without anesthesia. Now, I'm extremely sorry to say, but this represents the lowest point of humanity. Human history has not witnessed such bloodshed within the last century. All of this is happening before our very eyes. The genocide in Gaza is being broadcast live every moment through the media and social media. So far, Israel has deliberately killed 250 journalists working in national and international, but they still have not been able to cover up the genocide. I wholeheartedly support Secretary General Guterres because he consistently draws attention to the ongoing genocide in Palestinian territory.
His speech has intensified diplomatic pressure on world leaders to act decisively on the Gaza crisis and the border Israeli-Palestinian conflict. In a landmark moment, Syrian President Ahmed al-Sharaa, speaking for the first time in nearly 6 decades as Syria's head of state, delivered a brief but pointed address condemning Israel's action in Gaza and across the region. Without naming Israel directly, al-Sharaa denounced the violations of Syrian sovereignty and described the suffering in Gaza as part of a broader pattern of apartheid, oppression, and displacement. He called on the international community to end what he termed falsehoods and support justice for victims of persecution.
I guarantee to bring to justice everyone accountable and responsible for bloodshed. And in this context, Israeli strikes and attacks against my country continue, and Israeli policies contradict the international supporting position for Syria, which threatens new crises and struggles in our region. For this purpose, and in face of this aggression, Syria is committed to dialogue, and we're committed to the disengagement of forces agreement of 1974, and we call on the international community to stand beside us in the face of these attacks. Ladies and gentlemen, from the very moment the former regime fell, we set out a clear strategic policy built upon 3 pillars: balanced diplomacy, security, stability, and economic development. We filled the power vacuum, called for an inclusive national dialogue, and announced a government of competence. We strengthened the principle of participation and established a national commission for transitional justice and another for the missing, ensuring justice and fairness. We are now proceeding toward electing representatives of the people in the Legislative Council. We restructured civil and military institutions, dissolving all previous formations. Through intensive diplomatic activity, Syria restored its international relations and forged regional and global partnerships and achieved the gradual lifting of most sanctions, and we call now for the complete lifting of sanctions so that they no longer shackle the Syrian people. Investment laws have been amended, and major regional and international companies have already begun entering the Syrian market, contributing through investment and reconstruction. Syria today is rebuilding itself through establishing a new state, building institutions and laws that guarantee the rights of all without exception.
Al-Sharaa also urged the complete lifting of sanctions on Syria, framing his country's transformation from an exporter of crisis to an opportunity for peace. He declared truth has come and falsehood has perished, positioning Syria as a nation reclaiming its dignity after years of war and isolation. Here marks a quote the sentiment of other global South leaders at UNGA 80 who demanded accountability and a renewed commitment to Palestinian self-determination. And that wraps up the program. But before we go, the headlines again. You heard in the news that Trump declares end to 7 wars, criticizes global institutions. And Macron calls for peace, recognizes a Palestinian state. Also, Erdogan condemns Gaza assault, urges global recognition of Palestine. And Syria's president calls for end to Israeli violations, lifts voice for Palestine. For more updates and in-depth analysis, follow Politics and Business TV. Business.TV English on YouTube and Facebook. Connect with us on Instagram at PMBTV_English and TikTok at PMBTV_English. Remember to subscribe and stay informed. From me, Fatima Abubakar Oibo, do have a lovely day and bye for now.